Our scripture passage this morning comes from 2 Thessalonians. In your Pew Bible, it is page 1841. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verses 1 through 5, concentrating on verse 5. I'm reading from the Pew Bible, the New International Version, but I'm actually going to be talking from the New Living Translation version of verse 5. The Apostle Paul writes and says, "As for other matters, brothers and sisters, pray for us that the message of the Lord may spread rapidly and be honored, just as it was with you. And pray that we may be delivered from wicked and evil people, for not everyone has faith. But the Lord is faithful, and he will strengthen you and protect you from the evil one. We have confidence in the Lord that what you are doing and will continue to do, the things we command. May the Lord direct your hearts into God's love and Christ's perseverance." George already mentioned Friday was Valentine's Day. I got a Valentine from our 2-year-old granddaughter, Sylvie. I don't think she wrote from Sylvie to Grandpa Rick, Valentine's Day 2020. I think Mom or Dad took care of that. I found some Valentine's greetings that probably didn't make it onto any actual Valentine's cards. These are the greetings that wouldn't have made the cut. There's nobody else I would rather look at my phone next to than you. I'm so glad you are as weird as me. You annoy me more than I ever thought possible, but I want to spend every irritating moment with you. I love you even though you say Pacific when you mean specific. You hold my heart in your hand, so please do not clap. One more. You are hotter than Brad Pitt, George Clooney, and Johnny Depp put together. By the way, have you seen my glasses? Truth be told, full disclosure, I have mixed feelings about Valentine's Day. I really do. February 14th is possibly the most isolating and segregating date on the calendar. Since the 1960s, the percentage of single people in the United States has been steadily increasing. As of today, roughly 1/3 of the people in our country are single. For the kind of love that covers 100% of the population, I think we can do better. We need to look beyond human love. There's a quote in your faith exercise on the back of your prayer list from theologian Catherine Lacugna. She wrote this gigantic theological book about the Trinity. It's called God for Us. And she ends her book with this one simple sentence: "The very nature of God is to seek out the deepest possible companionship and friendship with every last creature on this earth." I like that so much, I want to say it again. The very nature of God is to seek out the deepest possible companionship and friendship with every last creature on this earth. That's the best news of all. So now we come to Paul's prayer in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 5. And from the New Living Translation, I want you to repeat it out loud after me, phrase by phrase. May the Lord lead your hearts into a fuller understanding and expression of the love of God and the patient endurance that comes from Christ. God's patient, enduring love. We find it in Jesus' fantastic parable from Luke 15 about the dad who had two sons, and the younger son basically said, "Dad, I wish you were dead, but I can't wait. I want my share of the inheritance right now." And that probably broke his dad's heart. He gave it to him, and the son immediately left and started doing a lot of knucklehead research, wasting his money. He ran out of money. He ended up feeding pigs, and the pig slop looked mighty good to him. He kind of came to his senses and said, "You know what? My dad's slaves have it better than this. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to see if he'll just let me become one of his slaves." And the part of the parable that touches me the deepest is that Dad saw this boy when he was still a long ways away. What does that tell you that the dad was spending his time doing? Waiting and watching. And he ran. He couldn't wait for this younger son to get to him. This post-hygienic son who probably smelled like and was wearing the pigs. And he embraced his son and called for a party. Didn't even let the son finish his prepared speech. Cut him off. That's the patiently enduring love of God. We also see it in Hebrews 12, verse 2, where the writer calls us to fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. That one three-word phrase, endured the cross, takes into account everything Jesus experienced from the time they arrested him through the trial, the beatings, the crucifixion, the humiliation, all of it. He patiently endured all of that for the joy set before him. You know what that joy is? I'm looking at a bunch of examples right now, and you're looking at one right now. We were the joy set before Christ. And because of us, he patiently endured. There's a lot of interesting things happening in the Greek language underneath verse 5. And I don't want to get into all of that detail this morning, but I want to use a word. The word is transceiver. Transceiver, actually. Transceiver. You have one. Our cell phones are transceivers because they pick up signals, they receive signals, and then because of the signal, you can transmit, you can text, you can message, you can activate all of your apps. And that's what this verse is talking about when it talks about the love of God. May the Lord lead your hearts into a fuller understanding and expression of the love of God and the patient endurance that comes from Christ. So it is the love of God and the patient endurance of Christ, but it's also love for God. We are human transceivers, so we receive God's love. That way we can give God's love. We've talked about this before. Think about the people you find impossible to love. You just got to go to the source and become a transceiver. Same with patient endurance. Maybe you've got that conquered. Maybe you don't need any help with patience. If so, please see me after worship so you can tell me how to get there. But for the rest of us, don't you need some patient endurance sometimes? Well, let's go to the source. We receive, and that way we can patiently endure each other. Now, our part in all of that, we have to become willing for God to lead our hearts. If I turn my cell phone off, is it going to receive? Has to be on. You and I have to be on. In other words, we need to be willing to receive, to understand and receive God's love. We have to be receptive. And if need be, God will outlast us. Just like that dad outlasted that young son. I grew up with a dachshund. You know what those are? Little furry tubular entertainment centers. Her name was Shotzi. Years later, Carla and Amanda and I decided we wanted to get a furry tubular entertainment center. This was so long ago that we looked in the newspaper, and we found one. And so on a Sunday morning, Carla and Amanda skipped church, skipped my sermon, and they went to purchase and bring home this dachshund named Ringo, named for the prominent nose, kind of like the drummer for the Beatles. So Ringo was the name. I got home before they did, and I knew they were coming, so I was standing at the door, and they got out with this 8-pound dachshund named Ringo on a leash. They were walking up the sidewalk. I opened the door. Ringo took one look at me and instantly went maniacally berserk. Ringo was terrified of me, and he wanted to tear me limb from limb. He was absolutely unmanageable, or as unmanageable as something 8 pounds can be. We learned the backstory. The family Carla and Amanda had met and purchased Ringo from, well, the couple had decided to get a dachshund to raise together with their brand new baby. Bad idea. This is not the kind of dog breed that you want when you're raising a small baby. And so the baby, as babies will do, loved to pull on Ringo's tail or ear, and Ringo loved to do what dachshunds would do in those circumstances. Ringo would snap at the baby, and the dad would grab Ringo and just pummel him, beating. This went on for 3 years, and they couldn't figure out why Ringo's behavior just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And finally, they were fed up, and they advertised Ringo in the paper, and Carla and Amanda brought Ringo home. Turns out I resembled that guy. So I love a good challenge. I sat down in the middle of the living room floor, and Carla took the leash off. Ringo immediately ran to the furthest corner of the living room, got up against the corner, faced me, and just started screaming at me non-stop. And I just stayed sitting on the living room floor, gently talking to Ringo. And this went on the rest of the day and the rest of the evening. We were all worn out, but nothing changed. And so finally, Ringo would allow Carla and Amanda to approach him. Carla put Ringo in a kennel. We all went to bed. The next day was a holiday, so when we got up, after I had eaten, I sat down in the middle of the living room floor. And Ringo again retreated to the corner and started screaming at me. By late morning, Ringo was inching toward me, but nothing changed. The volume didn't change. The demeanor didn't change. But he was slowly moving toward me. By early afternoon, he was at my feet, screaming at me. By late afternoon, he was standing on my lap, in my face, screaming. Dog needed a mint. By the time we went to bed, if I moved real slowly, I could actually hold Ringo and carry Ringo. He was tense, but I could carry him. Overnight, the two of us became inseparable. That dog had to be wherever I was. The house we had sported that ancient green carpet that so many old houses had. And we finally decided we were going to just tear up that carpet and see what was underneath. We got done. Ringo was a very smart dog, and he quickly figured out what we were doing. And he would run and grab the carpet and jerk his body up in the air. And he was pulling up carpet, 8-pound dog pulling up carpet that way. With tools, we had to scramble to keep up with him. I've never, ever bonded with a dog like that one. And that story reminds us of everything that's going on in this verse. May the Lord lead your hearts into a fuller understanding and expression of the love of God and the patient endurance that comes from Christ. Paul was instructing the Christ followers in Thessalonica to be like Christ in the way they related to broken and unredeemed people around them. Folks, we cannot patiently love people like Jesus does until we have responded to the patient love of Jesus ourselves. We can't give what we're not receiving. I am completely in awe of Christ's willingness to wait for me. And he's done that before. Wait for me to wear myself out, like I had to wait for Ringo. God has waited for me to hit bottom. And all the while, Christ never moved. Like the dad in Luke 15. Christ was in fact closer than my next heartbeat. Folks, Christ loves us enough to accept us exactly where we are, loves us too much to leave us as we are. And Christ is the one who never gives up on us, no matter what. I'm talking about uncreated and unconditional love available to all of us. How might your life change if you became full of God's patiently enduring love? Through the faith exercise, I want all of us to be thinking about that this week. As we come to the table in a moment to give our offerings and to take communion, may the Lord lead your heart into a fuller understanding and expression of the love of God and the patient endurance that comes from Christ. Amen.